All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Lunch and Learn today. I think we have a great topic and a great presenter. Our presenter today is Ms. Cheryl Williams, and she is with NAMI here, which is National Alliance of Mental Illness, and she's going to talk with you today for a few minutes about her organization and the support groups that they offer. I know Ms. Williams, she's very, very passionate about this topic here. It's definitely affected her life personally, and as soon as she retired, this is the first thing she jumped into. But without any further ado, Ms. Williams, you can go ahead and begin.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. As Lance said, that I've known Lance since like this big. He and his brother grew up with both my boys, and they grew up in Vidalia. And as I said before, I was in the classroom for 11 years, and then got my master's in school counseling and finished up my career at Vidalia High School as a counselor. And then a lot of things kind of started to happen, and my youngest son had some challenges. But before I talk about that, I want to know, raise your hand if you want mental illness. Raise your hand if you want mental illness. Yeah, nobody. And that's what mental illness and mental health conditions do. In my family, we surely didn't want mental illness to impact our family the way that it has. And more specifically, I surely didn't want my son to have mental illness, which is the challenge that he lives with daily. So I'm here today to stand up and speak out on a subject that so often we just don't talk about it. It's silent. It's one of those things that is a roadblock for those, especially my son, living with the illness, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But let me tell you a little bit about my son. Well, I have two boys, actually. One's 33 and one's 31. And my 31-year-old, his name is Heath. He was a stellar student. He was a stellar athlete. Played basketball in high school, got a full academic scholarship at Middle Georgia, played basketball in Middle Georgia for 2 years. And at the end of his second year, he met a young lady, and we knew he was drinking. Yep, we knew he was drinking, but didn't think it was anything like really inappropriate, what college students do. And then he went to Georgia Southern, and this little girl followed him, and he continued to drink and party. And his dad said, "Well, son, you've got to do something with your life. You know, you can't," because he would stop. He didn't go to classes and such. And he said, "I know. I'll join the Marine Corps." So, you know, as a parent, you always support what your kids want to do. You said, "Okay, you join the Marine Corps," and so his MOS was communications, and he traveled with a sniper platoon, and he spent 8 months in Iraq, and that was the trigger to his illness. When he came back after his 8-month deployment, he spent about 9 months in and out of the psychiatric ward at Camp Lejeune. So often people ask me, well, Cheryl, if Heath didn't go to Iraq, or if he didn't join the Marine Corps, would he still have gotten the illness? And my question is this, and what I've learned on our journey is we don't know, but I have met families whose loved ones have a severe and persistent mental illness, and their mental illness was caused by a major traumatic life event, like a divorce or death in the family, or other events that cause such trauma. My son is currently living with a severe and persistent mental illness, and it's schizophrenia with PTSD complications. Thank God he's got the VA. Thank God he's in a place now in his illness where he receives help. For some reason, folks, that, there's not, the reason is that when my son was early in his illness, everything was okay, I'm all right, I don't need help. You're the one, Mama, that's not all right. You're the one that needs some help, it's not me. But it's because of NAMI that I learned that that's part of the illness. And NAMI is an acronym that stands for National Alliance on Mental Illness. And when my son first came back from Iraq, and he came back to Vidalia, and here I had a son that I loved with severe and persistent mental illness, with PTSD complications. He wouldn't allow us to go to the VA in Dublin, because he lived with us for a little while, because he was still real guarded. He was still in that military mindset and still real guarded. The VA has family programs. I didn't know about the family programs because he did not want me to go and see about it. He was still, again, in that military mode. I'm all right, Mom. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm all right. It wasn't until I contacted the congressman, because I needed to learn how to navigate through the VA to get not only my son some help, but to get my family some help. Because when your loved one is faced with the challenge of a mental illness, I feel like as a family member, not that it was my duty, but I had a combat vet, I had a combat Marine. And I felt like I had an obligation, if you want to call it that, to the community, to keep the community safe. So that's when I got in touch with somebody. It was when John Barrow was in office, and I called him. I need some help, and so I worked around what my son didn't want me to do. I didn't go to the VA. I worked around it, and then that way I got some help. And so my son was placed on intense case management because he was in and out of the hospital. He would have 4 hospitalizations a year, because again, non-compliant with the medication. I'm okay. I would say, oh my gosh, but the behaviors were a little bit bizarre. Sometimes the behaviors were a lot bizarre when his illness was severe, depending on how long it was away from the last time he took his medication. So I knew that as an educator that I had to get some help for me and my, sorry about that, for me and my family to help my son. And so with the VA, we got a case manager, and sometimes there's, and I see somebody in uniform, and thank you for your service. And sometimes the VA gets a lot of crap said about the VA. You guys, the VA help, you have to go looking for it. There are programs out there, and there's programs at the VA, but you got to look for them. And your loved one is somebody that's going to put like a roadblock like my son did, but I couldn't allow that to happen. I had to go about it to where I could learn about the programs that were available. And hence he got a social worker that came out to the house at least twice a week for about 2 years. And so that is available if you have a loved one that is a veteran. And so then that's when NAMI came. I saw it in the papers, the Savannah Morning News, that they were teaching a family-to-family class. And my husband and I were also at different parts, because when you are faced with an emotional, anything emotional, your thoughts and feelings are all over the place, and there are stages of emotional responses. And I was here, and my husband was here, and we were arguing. We've been married 34 years at the time. We were arguing about what we should do with Heath, what we shouldn't do with Heath. And so we found NAMI, read about NAMI, and went to a class in Savannah, and it was a family-to-family class. And thank God we found this family-to-family class. It's a 12-week free program. All NAMI's programs are free. They're funded by the Department of Behavioral Health. And this saved our marriage, and it just made sense to me, and it helped me understand my son's illness. It helped me understand the schizophrenia. It helped me understand the PTSD, and it helped me understand that where I fit in as a family member on how I could help my son. And then it could take a deep breath. So then I went to Atlanta and got trained to teach a family-to-family class. And so we just finished up a class and finished with 14 people in Vidalia, Toombs, Montgomery, Statesboro. Someone came from Bullitt County. 14 people just took this class. They have loved ones who are facing mental illness, and they want to help them. And 1 in 4 people have a mental health diagnosis or a mental health condition, but we just don't talk about it. It's one of those things. Me being, and thank goodness STC contacted me, and Cheryl, would you speak at Lunch and Learn? I said, absolutely, because this is what helps erase the stigma. And we're going to talk about the stigma in just a minute. So family to family is available in our area. I run a family support group for family and caregivers of loved ones who are dealing with mental illness. We meet the second and fourth Tuesday at the Dixon Building, and I have flyers on that back table in the back. And we have about 20 people that kind of come and go, but we have a consistent like 15 folks that come. There's no substitute for shared experiences. No substitute at all for shared experiences, and you know somebody that knows how it feels to have a loved one with a severe and persistent mental illness or mental health, living with a mental health condition. Being an educator, I knew that it was at the Vidalia High School especially, not so much noticed at the middle school level, but the high school level, I had a lot of parents that, students that were in crisis, and they would be, spent some time in the, either St. Simon's or another kind of mental health facility, and then they would get discharged, and then the counselors get their discharge paperwork because we've got to know that they're not a harm to themselves or others, and that's kind of required. So then the parents would start talking to me, and it was just kind of, wow, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. Then I would talk to them about mental health. So then I went and got trained for basics, and this is a 6-week free class for parents and caregivers of children who are living with challenges. And so this is also available in our community. And then here recently, 2 months ago, my husband and I went and got certified to teach this home front, which is new to Georgia. 13 states are the only, there are only, I think, 13, maybe 12, and Georgia was the 13th state to have this program available. And Homefront is an education program taught by, again, peers, taught by those who know what it's like to have a family member or a service member come home from war or come home from the military with some mental health challenges. And again, this is free. It's to help strengthen military families. They're really targeting like the wives and the young families of the soldiers that are coming back, because they just don't say a whole lot because there's still so much stigma that's attached to it. So we're trying to get that word out in the community as well. So that's NAMI. Can you tell I really like NAMI? I met somebody. We're getting a suicide coalition together, me and Janet Stanley and Les Salter and David Gibbs. We've had quite a few suicides here in our area, especially in Montgomery County. Montgomery County has a high rate of suicide. As of those who are living with a mental health condition, they also have high rates of suicide, as does veterans. So my son, being someone who's living with a severe and persistent mental illness, and then he's a veteran, he is really at risk of suicide. And a lot of times when he goes into psychosis, when he's not thinking clearly and he's not in reality, he'll flip back in that military mode and walking off clicks. And then we have to, when he's home, we call 911. And 911 has CIT trained officers. We live in Montgomery County. There are currently no CIT trained officers in Montgomery County, but Sheriff Kite has 100% of their officers that are CIT trained. And what that means is this: when I give a call, my son hasn't taken his meds, and did I tell you that alcohol is his drug of choice? Did I tell you all that? Okay. So he self-medicates with alcohol, and then the brain chemistry, his thoughts are real distorted, and then I know that the problem's bigger than me. He won't take his meds. He's well beyond that. I call 911 and I tell him where I live, tell him I need a CIT trained officer, and Montgomery County says, I'm going to call somebody from Toombs. Is that okay? I said, yes, please do. And you can do that. Even if you live in Montgomery County and your loved one is in crisis, ask for a CIT trained officer and they will come to your house. And this is what it looks like. So you've got my son, who is, he's about 6'4". Again, he's a combat vet. And he is walking off clicks, behavior a little bit bizarre. because again, he's had a break from reality. And that's what schizophrenia is also. It's a thought disorder. So his thoughts are disorganized, and he also thinks that he's back in Iraq, or he thinks that he's helping, or I don't know what he's thinking sometimes. But anyway, so when the police officers get there, there are always 2 police officers, and I always tell the 911 operator, I always tell them that he's a combat vet. I always tell them as much information as you can so they know kind of what they're coming into. He's a combat vet. He has schizophrenia, PTSD complications. And then here come 2 police officers. Again, Toombs County comes across county lines to make phone calls, to make these calls. And so my son, you know, as a parent, you know, you think that you're the authority. Well, not at that particular moment in time. The cop is an authority figure to my son and to those most of the time who were in psychosis. And so when they come up to the driveway, they leave a little bit of space, give him space, and one police officer parks at the bottom of the driveway, one comes in the driveway, and they just give him choices. And he treats my son with dignity and respect because they're trained that way. They're trained to give people that are in either a mental health psychosis or a drug-induced psychosis or an alcohol-induced psychosis or a trauma-induced psychosis. They treat them with respect. And I just can't say enough about that. So then they say, do you want to get in this car because you're going for an assessment, or do you want to get in this car? And he says, well, that car looks like the back seat's bigger. Okay, we'll go with that car. And then he goes to the hospital for an evaluation. There are some times when we have to file a 1013, which is an involuntary to apprehend. And but again, when that happens, we ask for a CIT trained officer with a 1013, and they respond. And then he comes to the ER, and then the doctor makes an assessment, and then you wait for transport, because then that's the next step to get him to a facility to get him stable again. And you guys, medication works, treatment works. There is wellness and recovery in mental health. A lot of folks don't think that for whatever reason. Maybe their loved one has been ill for a long time, and you see some, that reminds me to say this, there's some statistics that you'll see that 1 out of 5 people are living with a mental health diagnosis, then you'll see some statistics that say 1 out of 4. Well, that 1 out of 4 is really the most accurate number. The 1 out of 5, they include the percentage that doesn't get help, because there's so many folks with that need help that don't get help. So NAMI says 1 in 4 folks live with a mental health diagnosis. So let me go back to CIT training. We just had a training at the Vidalia Police Department right after Thanksgiving, the week after Thanksgiving. We trained, and we being NAMI is the support staff, and Danny Williamson at Toombs County Sheriff's Department, he's the training officer. So we trained jailers, we trained 911 operators, we trained deputies, we trained sheriffs. And that, particular class, we didn't have any Georgia State Patrol, but we have had those folks participate as well. So NAMI is, in CIT, they're leading the not only the nation, but the world in the number of law enforcement that is getting trained in CIT. So I just wanted you guys to be aware that that is also available in our community, CIT training. Yes, sir? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't tell you, I'm sorry. Crisis Intervention Team Training, because it's a team, and it's a week-long training, intense training, 8 hours a day, and they do scenarios on how to approach somebody that is in psychosis or in crisis. And it's good stuff, and they learn about all of the severe and persistent mental health illnesses, as well as other mental illnesses as well. So thanks for asking that. Yes, ma'am. It's free, and again funded by the Department of Behavioral Health for Developmental Disabilities. Yes. Yes. There's monies out there. The reason I push all of the NAMI signature programs is because without those programs and we don't have data to support the funding, then as long as we show that there's a need, they will continue to fund. You know, and that's a blessing. That's a blessing. Also, before you leave, I want everybody to get one of these cards, and I'm sorry, I guess I should have put them out there on the table. But this is also available in our area. It was available in our area probably about 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half. And I can't help but think about, maybe it was because, it wasn't solely because of my son, but they knew that Toombs County and Montgomery County, they needed some support. So they extended this program, and this is called the GCAL. Anybody ever heard of the Georgia Crisis and Access Line? You're going to go home with one of these cards today. And I've had to call this number because ultimately I do not want my son in the hospital because when he goes in the hospital, it's expensive to spend 10 days or even 3 days, up to like $1,000 to $1,500+ sometimes even $5,000 a day, depending on what facility. He's never been to one of those facilities, but this is the Georgia Crisis and Access Line, and they will come to your house. I've had these folks come to my house when my son, he's on the line, but all he needs to do is take his meds for at least a couple days, then he'll be okay. We won't have to put him in the hospital. And that's what he wants. So it's amazing. These folks are trained. They're licensed practicing counselors, or and they travel with another counselor. They always come in twos. They will come to your house and they will talk to your loved one. They talked my son into taking his meds 2 different times, because that's their mission. They are trying to get your loved one help so that they don't go into the hospital. And there's even like a little checklist on the back of the card. If you know someone who threatens or talks about hurting or killing themselves, feeling hopeless, feeling rage or uncontrolled anger, feels trapped, like there's no way out, engages in reckless behavior, increases alcohol or drug use, withdraws from friends and family, feels anxious, agitated, or unable to sleep, encounters dramatic mood changes, sees no reason to live, then you call this 1-800 number. And they will come to your house for free. So even if you yourself are feeling this way, you can call this number. They'll talk to you, they ask you a series of questions, and then based on those questions, then they'll send somebody out to your house to talk to you and your loved one. So this is a wonderful, wonderful resource. I've used it, just like I've used the CIT training. Any questions about NAMI or the programs that I know I feel like I'm talking fast because I know y'all already ate some pizza. Any questions about NAMI? All right, now we're going to talk about stigma. My son said that he would rather be had the label of a homeless drunk than have the label of schizophrenia with PTSD complications. The stigma is terrible, you guys. Yes, ma'am. He won't take the meds. There's a lot of side effects for those psychotropic drugs. And he's 31 years old. And a lot of them that make him feel like he's in a fog. He doesn't feel like things are just like in slow motion. And they have sexual dysfunctions. I'm just going to be honest with you. So that's another reason why. We have that relationship, and he allows me to be transparent about his illness. Thank goodness he does. And he's close to me, and he tells me that, you know, Mom, I'm 31 and XYZ. I said, well, tell the doctor. So then also he allows me to be part of his treatment plan, and he allows me to go to the psychiatrist with him. And if he doesn't tell, I tell. I do, and he's okay with it, you know. And then she'll say, "Is that true?" Because he's embarrassed. He's embarrassed by it. But now he's on Abilify, and he's doing well. He hasn't had a hospitalization since July, and I know that doesn't seem like wow, but it's better than, you know, if July, August, September, October, November. So, you know, his history is November, or he should have been hospitalized in November, but he continued with the meds. And slowly it's starting to click. Hey, because I keep telling him there is wellness and recovery and mental health. And there is. And I see it. I see it every day. But the stigma just sucks. The stigma is horrible. Me personally, my husband, I've lost friends because when Heath was at home, his behavior was so bizarre. They were like, ugh, I didn't want to be around him. He lost friends. When he came home, he was different. And his illness makes him a little bit different, but he is who he is. And that's with NAMI. We try to tell our family members and even tell my son, we see the person first and not the illness. And that's one of the things that NAMI says about stigma. You got to see the person first and not the illness. Talk openly about mental health, and that's what I do. Then tell you my story. And again, thank goodness my son allows me to be transparent about his illness. He's slowly talking about it, but he's getting there. Educate yourself and others about mental illness. That's why you guys are here. And I appreciate you guys seeing. When I clicked on that Lunch and Learn and I saw my name and saw the topic, and because not a lot of people come to these things when they talk about mental illness, because people think that you guys are here because, oh, well, you might have a mental illness. So it took courage, and I really appreciate you guys coming here. And I hear people tell me that when they come to the family support group, and I have it at the Dixon building, and it's inconspicuous as it can be, but they're like, I didn't know somebody might see me come walking in and know that my family member might have a mental illness. And when I first started talking about my son, I had friends that say, Cheryl, then everybody's going to know that Heath has a mental illness. I'm like, well, you know what? They already know something's different. They already know. He wears his hair differently. He dresses differently. He's my son, and I love him. Encourage equality in how people perceive physical illness and mental illness. Mental illnesses are brain-based illnesses. Like diabetes is a pancreas illness, like heart disease or vascular disease is a heart illness. Mental illness is a brain-based illness. Share empathy and compassion for those living with a mental health condition. Seek a support group if you need some help. Push back against the way people who live with mental illness are portrayed in the media, and push back hard. And that's what NAMI's mission is, to educate, support, and advocate. So we advocate a lot. See the person, not the illness. I've already said that. And advocate for mental health reform. In fact, what we're advocating for right now is House Bill 705. And House Bill 705 is a bill that will kind of go around the HIPAA laws. Because one time my son, is it almost, I know y'all are hungry. What time is it? Oh, good. I got one more minute. One time, sorry, I know y'all want to, I got to eat. One time he was in the hospital, and they wouldn't tell me whether or not he had his meds. Well, before that, he had been incarcerated because of some behaviors, and they didn't understand. So he was picked up, put in Toombs County Jail. He was, again, not in, he was in psychosis, break with reality. Then he charges somebody at the jail. They tase him, bust up his head, went to the ER. The ER then, somebody knew me, so he calls me, and he said, Cheryl, we have Heath here. I said, okay. Once I got to the ER, I had his med bottle, and the military, they're not politically correct, because on the med bottle it said, this med for schizophrenia, and it had, so I said, these are his, and he's been off of them. And so by that time, the doctor was trying to stitch up his injury, and he thought the doctor was trying to put a chip, again, he's flipping to military mode, trying to put a chip in his head. That's what he was thinking, and it was real to him. And so he assaulted the doctor, and then all hell broke loose, And so long story short, they took him back to Toombs County Jail, and I called and I said, did anybody give him his meds? I don't know. So I called the ER. Well, man, we can't tell you that because of the HIPAA laws. And I'm like, oh my gosh, holy smokes, you gotta be kidding me. So this House Bill 705 is a bill that's going to kind of go around this and then allow Heath to sign a paper that said my mom and my dad and my brother can have access to my medical records, and they can be privy to anything that you do to me or not do to me at the ER or at the doctor's office. So that's what's at the Capitol right now being voted upon, so maybe that'll work. But So again, thank you all for having me today, and there is wellness and recovery and mental health, and if you have somebody that's living with a mental health challenge, come join us at the family support group, or just talk about it. I encourage you, like Mike Vinny, I don't know if you guys had a chance to come out last Friday night when Les and David put up that Transforming the Stigma with their new coalition, Day After Today. He was great. His silence, not doing anything about it, it's not going to make anything better, basically is what he said. But in this community, it's time to stand up and speak out on mental illness, and that, again, will help with stigma. Any other questions or comments? Yes, ma'am. We meet on every Tuesday and Thursday at 6:30. I'm sorry, the second and fourth Tuesday of each month at the Dixon Building in the Ed Smith Complex at 6:30. It's across from Captain's Corner. Yep. But we would love to have you. My name and number and contact information is on those pamphlet and flyers on the table that you guys signed in at. And again, I really appreciate you guys' attention, and thank you for coming, and y'all have a wonderful day. Appreciate you. Thank you.